All right. So, I'm sure we have all had at least one sip of coffee throughout the course of our life, or at least know someone who has. And I'm sure many of us on a daily basis drink coffee to get through the rigor of being a college student here at Cal Poly Pomona. So today I'm here to tell you why coffee has a positive influence on your overall wellness, and wellness being defined as both mind and body health. And I will do this by explaining how coffee creates a culture, how coffee can reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes, and how it can help you live longer. So to begin with the coffee culture that is created, I'm going to read you all a quote from Starbucks Coffee Company from their website, and it states, "It's not unusual to see people coming to Starbucks to chat, meet, or even work. We're a neighborhood gathering place, a part of the daily routine, and we couldn't be happier about it." I really like this quote because I feel that Starbucks really projects the coffee culture in which I'm speaking of and creates it on its own. Many other cafes all around the Los Angeles and pretty much throughout the world create this culture as well. And to give a personal anecdote, something that I do is travel to different cafes to find this culture and just hang out and study. And I think this is an overall positive influence on your mind health because community is huge, and this is a great thing. So not only does coffee create an awesome culture, but it also reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes. So if you're like me and have type 2 diabetes coming from both sides of the family, this might mean something to you. So in 2014, Diabetologia, which is a clinical and experimental research publisher, published an article titled Changes in Coffee Intake and Subsequent Risk of Type 2 Diabetes, 3 large cohorts of US men and women. And this states, or the findings states, that participants who increased their coffee consumption by more than 1 cup per day over a 4-year period had an 11% lower risk of type 2 diabetes in the subsequent 4 years. So what that means essentially is that by increasing their cup of coffee once per day, they had an 11% reduction of their risk of type 2 diabetes. So that's pretty good. Maybe that extra cup of coffee at night isn't such a bad thing. So in addition to creating a culture and reducing your risk of type 2 diabetes, coffee can also help you live longer. So according to an article from the Science Daily and research presented by the European Society of Cardiology in 2017, states higher coffee consumption is associated with a lower risk of early death, according to new research. The observational study in nearly 20,000 participants suggests that coffee can be part of a healthy diet in healthy people. So overall, I think it's great that there's much research proving that coffee is definitely positive to your wellness and can help you live longer. And although there are many counter arguments to this, there are a lot of scientific evidence proving it. So coffee is good. So overall, I hope that these points help you feel more positive about your coffee intake or the coffee intake of those that you love. So to conclude, coffee has a positive effect on one's overall wellness. It creates a culture, it can help reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes, and can ultimately help you live longer. Thank you.
All right, Denise, I think you need to do a little bit more to show that there's controversy on this, suggestions that maybe people are concerned about coffee consumption, criticisms of places like Starbucks. That's not easy to find. That's not hard to find. There are plenty of people out there who have complaints about all kinds of coffee places, in particular Starbucks. I think that that would make it a little bit clearer why it is you have to make this particular argument. Your proposition, though, is clearly identified, and you have a very clear statement of what the supporting structure is going to be, so it's easy to follow. Like I said, I just think the controversy needs a little bit of work. In the body of the speech, even though you don't use numerical signposts, it's relatively easy to follow the structure, especially when you go to the second and the third points, because it's you clearly finish each of the preceding points. So that's good. You explain things on the individual points, and I think that that's solid. And you come across as relatively knowledgeable. You use some personal experience as a way to gain a little bit of ethos. Now, let me tell you what the weakness is. And the basic weakness is that you're relying on like a single piece of evidence on each of these points. And some of that evidence is, you know, at best a piece of opinion, and sometimes it's just a personal opinion. On the coffee culture thing, for instance, I think that there is an idea about maybe there is a culture that's created there and there's something nice about it. But the one source that you quote is Starbucks, who talks about how great they are. I'm not exactly sure that's an unbiased source talking about the coffee culture. The other one that you have is your own personal experience there, and I don't know how widespread your experience is, but you never really tell us what's unique or different or beneficial about that particular culture. So if I've got this coffee culture, what does it encourage me to do? Does it encourage, you know, the idea that you're reaching out with other people or talking to other people? That sounds great. Is that what people do? My guess is that most people who hang out at Starbucks, you know, they visit with their friends, which they could do anywhere, or they work on their own someplace that's air conditioned and has internet access. But what's the advantage of that? I'm not sure. So in essence, I think this is an interesting potential argument, but it doesn't have much force behind it, and that's a little bit problematic. The type 2 diabetes evidence argument, basically you have one study that showed a relationship here, and that's about as far as it goes. And it says that it's not even, you know, it's not that it's a bad study, but the amount of decrease is, you know, an 11% reduction of risk of developing type 2 diabetes, which is a little bit vague. And I'm going to guess that there's probably a specific kind of coffee that they're consuming, because if you're getting a caramel macchiato at Starbucks, that's not going to decrease your risk of diabetes. It seems to me like the exact opposite of that would be the case. So I mean, we need to know a little bit more about this study, and I think since it's the only evidence that you have on that point, it kind of feels like it's out there on its own, and you need some confirming evidence. You need some external evidence that supports that as well. And then the last point on longevity, you do cite a source that has done some research on this, but it doesn't give us any quantification of the decreased risk of longevity. In fact, the one thing that applies is it says coffee can be part of a healthy diet, and that's about as much as it says. So how it increases longevity is not clear. Whether any of that's measurable is not clear, or whether it just seems like you live longer because you're awake more. I'm not sure what the argument is there. You know, so it just feels like the content is a little thin. You've got the right idea here, but you need more substantive proof for your points. It's nicely organized. I think you do a very good job presenting it. I know you're a little anxious and nervous there, but you did fine. You know, that sort of thing. And I thought that you talked to us, which is what we want people to do in their speeches. So thank you.